We've been required to do it since 2020. Jamie Dimon is against it. Elon Musk says it's morally reprehensible. I'm going to talk a little bit about working from home and why it is here to stay, like it or not. Also, we're going to talk about why these major CEOs are fighting the idea. My name's Donna with Bookkeeping Made Simple, and I am excited to share my thoughts on working from home with you. I have worked from home for about 20 years, or worked remotely, I guess I should call it, long, and I saw the future way, way back in about 78 when I was just a little girl. Um, I recognized that this was going to be something that was going to happen, and the reason is um, half of the working population are women. And maybe a little bit less than half, because a lot of women do choose to be home with their children when their children were little. That's certainly what I did when my children were preschoolers, toddlers. I tried to be home with them. I felt like that was what my job was as a mother. And most of the caretaking burden falls on women. So sorry, Elon. Sorry to Jamie Dimon. Sorry. All of you finance CEOs who are white males. Um, Working from home is here to stay. It is not, it is a new phenomenon in that it was something we did. Is that I have worked from home, by the way, literally since the 90s. As soon as the internet was available and viable to use to work from home, I began working from home. My office has always been in my home. I'm making a little bit of an adjustment because I'm now looking for office space strictly to meet with clients so they don't have to come to my home office. Um, but beyond that, I work from home. Why? Well, I have a lot of caretaking responsibilities. And I'm going to speak, almost exclusively from my own experiences because that's the ones that I know best. But I have also um, talked to a number of people, overwhelmingly women, who are desperate to keep this trend going and to remain in a remote position. So let's talk about the benefits and the risks. I haven't seen a lot of drawbacks, but there are some risks. The benefit is that as someone who works remotely, I can, I'm here in Kentucky, helping to take care of my parents, spending some extra time with them. I didn't have to take vacation time. I didn't have to tell my staff that, oh gosh, gee whiz, I'm going to be in Kentucky. Business is going to have to shut down for 3 weeks. I just picked up my laptop and got on a plane and got here and opened my laptop, and it's business as usual. It was very reassuring to be able to tell that to my clients that yes, I will be out of the state for a few weeks, but it is business as usual. I will still be having my meetings. I can still talk to you. I can still make a lot of things work. Um, as someone who I've always been a caretaker. Okay, I have 5 children. I have 7 siblings. I have elderly parents. My husband is facing some kind of scary surgery. And all the way through these, I have to be the one, or I've always been the one, to take care of them because of that. And by the way, my employees are by and large single mothers. So that means that we and I and they have the freedom to do things like drop kids off at school, take an afternoon off to go to a recital or a soccer game or a graduation ceremony. I've asked them to notify me if they're going to be, quote, out of the office for more than an hour, simply because, actually, I've asked them to notify me if they're unavailable, but simply because I want to make sure that I know who's quote unquote on the clock. However, and to be honest, I'm probably going to move a bit more towards the possibility of a hybrid situation. Again, this would be for training and mentorship and not for providing deliverables. So if I have staff members who need extra training, I am seeking an office so that I can be there. That probably will be where I will work most of the time, so that I can provide some oversight and some mentorship. It's a little bit more difficult to do in remotely, but it is also very doable. Where the disconnect, I think, is coming in is that the workers feel like they're more productive at home. And I agree with that. I use a Pomodoro timer all day because I have ADHD, because it's hard to sit for long periods of time. And it is hard to, it's hard to focus for that long. In an office setting, people would come by my desk. I would be required to take certain breaks. I would be, there would be times when I would just get up and walk around, or I would have to get up and take paperwork to someone. I haven't worked in an office, by the way, since the 90s. Oh, that's not true. I guess I had an office job in the early 2000s. But there's things that you have to get up and move around and accomplish in an office that if you're working from home, it's really easy to forget about your breaks, forget about lunch, and forget about, I can't tell you how many times I've worked 10-hour days. Again, remember, I'm the business owner, so I'm very invested in the business. I've worked 10 and 12-hour days and forgotten to eat, forgotten to get up. The bathroom is really close, so you don't have that long walk down the hall that you do in an office. So, there's some things that can be adjusted. I'm a proponent of the Pomodoro timer because most of my work as an accountant has high focus. And I need to be able to be reminded to get up, walk around, go pick up the mail, get up and walk around a little bit, just so that I'm not crippled by sitting for so long. Also, people overthink the water cooler. Now, this is where I do think some of these CEOs of the Fortune 500 companies may have a point. It's a little bit easier to drop by a desk and ask for help than it is to pick up a phone or to send a Slack message. We use Teams, so a Teams message. And it's harder to phrase things sometimes. So I have had staff members ask for help over Teams, not understood what they wanted, and then followed that up with a video call where we can share screens, and which, by the way, that is hard to do in person. It's much easier for me to share to view their screen over Zoom than it is for me to bend over their shoulder and try to see what they're looking at. So there's workarounds for this, but from their point of view, it's easier for them to come into my office and ask me questions if they're in person than it is for them to say, I need some of your time and can I share screens, and technology is now involved. But I just don't think this trend is going away. Like I said, the reason being given by most of these CEOs is that they want to provide mentorship and training, which I understand. I agree with it. It's easy to lose track of what your employees are doing if you are not around them. If you're kind of isolated in your own home office, I understand that. But I think that mandating them to be in the office certain days is not the direction I want my company to go. Also, a lot of people during 2020 and 2021, when it looked like it was permanent, that remote work was going to be permanent, moved. They moved out of these high cost of living areas and they moved into more rural areas where they could have cheaper housing. Cost of living is lower. Their dollars went further. And then all of a sudden to be called back into the office. So if you were in Menlo Park and you decided to move to Napa Valley or even into Nevada to escape some of the California taxes, and now all of a sudden you're being told you have to be back in the office, well, that's not just a minor inconvenience. Okay, that is, now I have to sell the house that I bought, or I have to find a new place, and I have to go back and deal with all that. That's a big deal. Also, from the worker's point of view, many of them also made commitments based on the idea that they were going to be working remotely, and those are hard to break. Many of them also, by the way, I have a lot of beef with California employment law. It's terrible. So we have to deal with, the employees have to deal with, they may have moved to take advantage of lower cost of living areas. They have to deal with commutes if they return to the office. Commutes prior to 2020 were up to 2 hours a day, if not, and some of them were longer. By the time you counted in the rush hour traffic and the stress and everything else. I can tell you my commute through 10 feet of shag carpet is pretty rough. And especially in the wintertime in Utah, when it snows and snows and snows like it did this year, a lot of snow this year. It was wonderful to be able to look at the UDOT traffic site, see all the crashes and say, thank goodness I don't have to drive. So that's from the employee point of view. They're home. They can do things like they can throw a load of laundry in the washer. Why people have a problem with this, I don't know. Because if I can do a few things here and there throughout my day, that especially things like starting the dishwasher, starting the washing machine, that means that that's less that I have to do in the evening when I got home from work. And that means that all of my obligations that I have as a mother, as a caretaker, as a homemaker are taken care of by the time it gets to be evening. And I can relax because in 5-minute spurts throughout the day, I've jumped up to empty the dishwasher. I've jumped up to move laundry through. I've, by the way, when I say I use the Pomodoro timer, I'm really strict about it. It's 25 minutes. And then thank goodness for my smartwatch, I set a 5-minute timer on my phone. I go do whatever I can. And as soon as that timer goes off again, I am back at my desk. But honestly, that from the employer point of view, I would rather have my staff do that because it makes them better employees. It makes them feel valued. 2, they don't have to worry about digging out of their driveway in the wintertime. 3, they're able to accomplish more throughout their day because they can break things down into smaller size blocks. I also have no problem with them, say, taking an afternoon off, like I said, to be at their child's graduation or to help in their child's classroom or to homeschool their kids, whatever they need to do, because they will come on later in the evening and they will be able to continue that work. We're leaning now towards a society where everybody is supposed to be on 24/7, and I don't like that. I also don't like this idea that the time from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. is business hours. I do like that personally because I don't want to be receiving phone calls and texts and emails late at night. But with the tools that we have now, where you can schedule your emails, I can schedule even my team stuff. Um, I can um, I can plan how that comes in. And so many of us now, we don't just remote asynchronously inside the United States. Some of these big companies have workforces around the world. So at one point I had a virtual assistant in the Philippines, so I didn't have to worry about her time zone. Um, what am I trying to say? We're all used to dealing with that kind of thing around the clock. So if my VA in the Philippines has a question for me and she sends it to me at 2 in the morning my time because that's her work time, that's fine. I will get to it when during my work hours. But what I don't want is I don't want clients calling me, and this has happened, at 11 o'clock at night with urgent questions, because there's no boundaries. That's the big reason I have a 9 to 5 office hours. It doesn't mean that that's the only time I'm doing work. It does mean that's the time that I'm available to my clients for a lot of reasons. So working from home, working remotely is immensely beneficial to the workforce. Those of us who are in jobs that permit it. The CEOs are so against it that Elon Musk even called it morally reprehensible to work from home. Now, I like Elon and I agree with a great deal that he says, but I think he's 30 years behind the times with this remark. It is morally reprehensible to refuse people the opportunity to work from home. Now, Elon has a very distinctive work style. He fills every minute of his day and he schedules every minute of his day. But he's not trying to juggle, and I get he's got 10 kids, okay, but he's not the one taking care of them physically. I'm sure he's taking care of them financially because he certainly has the resources to do that. And he doesn't, although he seems to be cheap in that he doesn't, he lives very simply. He does not seem to be the kind of person that would refuse to support his children. Okay. So he's looking at things from his experience, from his work ethic, from his point of view. And it could be that he doesn't know another way to work, or he doesn't know how to make this work for him. And that's fine. But don't say I'm being morally reprehensible because I don't want to go into Salt Lake City and I don't want to have an office. And I like my commute through 10 feet of shag carpet. And I've been able to set up my home office in a way that I'm comfortable, that the ergonomics are good, that I'm not hurting myself. And then I can go in and I can cook a healthy lunch. I'm not sure where, I think what he's getting at is when I worked at McDonald's, there was no getting around it. I had to go to McDonald's to work. When I worked prior to the information revolution, I had to go into an office because that's where the computers were. I couldn't afford to have a computer at home. People who work in a factory have to go to the factory. That's where the work is. And those of us who are in information services, like myself, we don't have to do that. He calls it privileged. Absolutely, it is. But isn't it also privileged for a man to say what a woman needs because he doesn't get it? I promise you, he's not the one cleaning his house. I promise you, he's not the one who's up at 3 a.m. nursing a crying baby. And he's just not. And I'm not making a moral judgment on him, but I think his comment about working from home being morally reprehensible is itself morally questionable. So why do the CEOs want people in the office? Well, they want the face-to-face contact, and I notice these are mostly older men, as in older than me. I am mid-career, and they're talking to 20-year-olds and 30-year-olds who have grown up with the internet, who have, just don't see the point in going into the office. And I agree with them for the most part. Like I said, I'm looking for an office now, but that is mostly to have a place for customers to come. It's also to have a place where if I need to do some training, it is awkward to have people in my home to train them. So if I need to do training or bring on new people, I want the mail to go there. I want training to occur there. Whatever needs to happen in person needs to occur there. But that would not be my primary workspace. It's still going to be my home. They are thinking that the only way to see who the promising people are is to have them in the office. And that's not true. They also think that the only way to manage what is being done as far as deliverables is to have people in the office. And I think 2020 and 2021 showed that that's not the case. What I really think is behind this is they have millions and billions of dollars in commercial real estate that they don't want to let go of. And I don't think the office is going away, but I don't think remote work is going away either. I think we're going to have to find a way to cohabitate, so to speak. So I'm seeking office space and what I would really like is a co-working space or someplace with a receptionist where I can have clients drop things off for me without having to come to my home. That's a little intrusive. It also opens things up for confusion between my work hours and my personal hours. So I would like to have a place with a virtual receptionist where people can drop things off, where I can leave packages, my clients coming to pick up their tax paperwork, here it is. And then I don't have to be there. But they have a dedicated office that they can go to. I would like to have an office so I can bring employees in and spend some time training them in person and really going over things and kind of watching over their shoulders and while they're getting up to speed, really get them very, very familiar with our processes and procedures to be able to meet with clients and talk to them about what we need from them. That would all be very nice, but it's not required. I manage my employees by having a weekly meeting. It's mandatory every Monday at 10 a.m. Mountain Time, and we get on Zoom. And right now we're a very small company, so there's only a few of us. So we get on Zoom and I go through employee by employee. How are your clients? Do you have any questions? Do you have any feedback? And then I talk to them about things that are going to be happening. For example, when we switched our CRM, I talked to them about this is what's going on. This is what I need you to do. When we switched our phone system, which was such a disaster, I talked to them. Okay, we can see the inbound calls. They're not ringing in. So if you see a missed call them back right then. We had to talk about the workarounds. We had to talk about and things that I felt were going to be coming up. So one of the things that we are beginning to implement is to enforce the quarterly reviews that I encourage. And so I'm talking to my staff more about, yes, every quarter I'm going to be reviewing your client's books and talking to your client about that. And you can be at that meeting if you want, but you don't have to be in. I would like you to maybe be available if I call you in. But that is when I talk to the client about, first thing I ask them, how are things going with their bookkeeper? But I do know there's some communication disconnects, but those can be resolved with training and not just as the employees. Sometimes it's training the boss. The bottom line, I think, though, is remote work is out of the bag. There's no putting the genie back in the bottle. People have discovered how freeing it is and how convenient it is to not spend that money on gas. Let me backtrack a minute. When I was going back to work after I had my first few kids, going back to work didn't just involve going back to work. It meant I had to go clothes shopping because I had to have appropriate clothes. And it meant I had to have a reliable car. And it meant that I had to have a budget for gas. And that meant that I had to have car insurance. So I had to have all the car expenses. And like I said, clothes and makeup and hair and all the stuff that I kind of let slide when my kids were little because I was just at home. Nobody ever saw me. Now I had to have a budget for it. And then I had to have my budget my time. So I had 8.5 hours in the office plus my commute. My commute, even here in Kentucky, where it's geographically spread out a bit, but it's still not that far. It was 30 minutes to get to work, not counting traffic each way. And I was just not okay with that. And that was that much more time that I could have been with my kids, that I could have been doing something productive, that I could have put towards a side gig, that I could have done so much more with that time than just sit in the damn car. Now we have a generation coming up that are very aware of ecological stewardship, and they're not interested in burning a lot of gas to get to work if they can avoid it. So they want to work from home if it's at all possible. Like I said, not every job allows for that. If you're an attorney, for example, you might work from home some days, but then you still have to go then you have times when you have to meet with clients. You have to do that in an office. And there are times when you have to go to work. To go to court to go to work. There are times when that in-person interaction is required. When I am doing a one-on-one to get to know someone to see if we can refer business back and forth or what can I do to help support their business, I like to do that in person because it gives me a little bit more, it feels more natural. And I think we need the in-person time, but I think it needs to be discretionary. So that's my take on work from home. I have done this effectively for over 20 years, and I have been learning a lot about how to manage remote employees. I'm going to do another video on managing remote employees probably in the next week or so to talk about what managers can do to make sure that their employees are doing the job that they're being paid to do. And it doesn't involve hours in a seat, and it doesn't involve mouse jigglers. It involves looking at the deliverables. So we'll talk about that next time. Thanks so much for watching. Hope this was useful to you. I'm afraid it was about as interesting as watching paint dry, and if so, I apologize for that. I'm looking forward to talking to you again next week.